So the presentation today is called Compassionately Addressing Challenging Behavior. It is a very interactive presentation, so I hope all of you are ready to engage and connect with one another this morning. So these are the things that we're going to talk about. We're going to look at relationship building, imagery activities. We're going to talk briefly about functional assessment, a little bit about ethical alternatives to traditional escape. Depending on where we are on time, I have some slides in here on research on the alternatives. If we don't have time, we will definitely look at, you can look at the slides. I put them in enough detail so that you can review them on your own. And then we will close out with discussion around the 3 steps to being compassionate when you're providing intervention on challenging behavior. So first, we're gonna start off right away with a video. I want you to watch this video that I will show you in just a second, and I want you to notice what the adults are doing to build a relationship with each child so that you can just identify for yourself in the chat, if you don't mind typing in what things you're noticing that the adults are doing to be fun with the children in the video. So this is same thing, just type in the chat what you notice. This is myself, and at the time a student, her name was Claire, she's a BCBA now, and we're playing with one of our little learners at the time. So just type in the chat what you notice we're doing to be more fun and develop a relationship. Okay, so what did you all notice? No demands, preferred activity, animated voices, sensory gross motor play, following his lead, following motivation, responding to his cue, using simple language. Perfect. Excellent. These are all wonderful comments about the video, making him feel special. So for this particular learner, you can see it doesn't last for very long. We're only engaging with him for about 20 seconds and then he's done and on to the next thing. This little guy, when we met him, he was really just interested in looking at phone books and logos for TV stations, and he didn't really pay any attention to us. So we had to spend a lot of time doing activities like this, just interacting with him and seeing what he would do. I don't know if you noticed, but Claire, who was a student at the time, I'm actually following her lead. She's teaching me, even though I was the supervisor. I'm not that much fun, and I had to follow her lead quite a bit to be more fun with my clients. So if you're like me and have a difficult time coming up with out-of-the-box ideas for how to be fun and creative, she's pretty much initiating all of the fun interactions in there. Oh, Michelle, I'm fun maybe now, but at that time I was not. I had to learn a lot from Claire. So you might want to think about taking time to find your Claire and have someone teach you how to kind of get out of the box and be a little bit more fun. So let's see if this next video, yay, it wants to work now. So same thing, I want you to watch this video. It's a little bit longer, and think about and comment in the chat what the adults are doing in this video to develop a relationship and connect with their learners. This video is from Tom Caffrey, and his website is at the end. I highly recommend looking at his resources as well. If you don't have a Claire, he might be a good inspiration for you.
Sometimes you just have to think, how can I have fun playing with kids? Use things that your child already likes, but make them better with your interaction. on a quarterly consult and haven't seen James in about 3 months. Notice that it took all of about 20 seconds for me to repair with him. James enjoys the swing in the sensory room, but he loves it even more when I'm around. Most of the time, it's not those $100 items that you need to buy at the toy store. It's just taking common items and having fun with them in a different way. Willie had little interest in the blocks, but when the block monster appeared, all of a sudden, he had a strong desire for them. Remember to think of fun ways to play with kids. Maybe children with autism, but they're children first. There are balloons that need to be blown up and bellies dying to be tickled. There is a stack of blocks begging to be knocked down. There are hungry dogs to feed. And your child's favorite character is just waiting for some foam in your finger to bring them to life. How about a big Tinky Winky? Tinky Winky, big Tinky Winky.
Okay. I saw a lot of comments coming through in the chat. So the most recent one says, pausing, waiting for a child to approach, respond. I saw a lot of people were noticing, I don't know what's going on with my light. Hold on. I don't know why it's doing that. Something about the way the sun's coming in. Anyway, a lot of people were noticing the over-exaggerated responding and how they were following the child's lead, doing activities that the child isn't able to do on their own and making that more fun. Smiles, engagement, responding to the child. So all of those are wonderful. This is from Tom Caffrey's site. The link is on, well, I think the link's on the PowerPoint. Let me go back to that and we can, but it's just tomcaffrey.com. Okay. Nope, I guess it's not on there. Sorry. So can you all see the keynote now? I don't know how this works. Did it just switch over to it or no? I don't think it did. I will get more fluent with this as we go.
That's okay, Megan. You're doing an awesome job, honestly. Yeah, so we can now still see the video.
Okay. I don't know why for keynote it's showing a different keynote than what I have. Okay, you can see this now, right?
Yes, we can see the slide that says why motivation.
Perfect. Okay, so I will make sure to put it in the chat on the next video, but it's just tomcaffrey.com, and he has some different videos on YouTube and Vimeo, and they're all really great. I highly recommend them. So why are we starting a presentation on challenging behavior focused on developing relationships and looking at motivation? It needs to be the first thing we focus on. If we're not attending to this, nothing else matters. We really need to make sure that we understand how to connect and build a strong, trusting relationship with the people that we're serving before we can try to help shift anything around their challenging behavior. If we don't have that strong, trusted relationship, and if we don't understand what's motivating for them, and we try to come in and address their challenging behavior without giving them the proper supports and really understanding who they are, we're going to probably make things worse for the person and deal with increases in challenging behavior that were unnecessary. So it's really important that we focus on this first. I have been in classrooms where I'm brought in to consult on cases to address, various tantrums, aggression, property destruction, all of those types of things. And I've often had to change the contract and say, first, we need to focus on how you can develop a stronger relationship with the students. And I've had people who just don't even know how to look at that. And, you know, they think if I give stickers or bubbles or this thing or that thing, I'll be successful, but they don't know how to really observe closely the child or the adult that they're working with and figure out what's motivating for them and connect over that. So I just like to start out with this and really lay the groundwork that as much as we're going to talk about challenging behavior today, it's really important that you know how to develop a strong relationship with your learners. So let's see, I think we just went, okay. So now we're going to do an activity, and this one is going to be a little bit of an imagery exercise. So what we're going to do, when I tell you to, you don't have to do it yet. And if you're comfortable, you're going to close your eyes and you're going to picture a time with a current or past client when you are having fun and building a relationship. When I tell you to start, what you're going to do is let the activity play out in front of you, and you're going to focus on what emotions are you and the client feeling in the activity? What is the energy level like in the activity? How do you physiologically feel in the activity? And then I also want you to notice for yourself in the moment, as you sit watching this activity play out, what emotions you're feeling, physiologically how you're feeling, how your heart is beating, and how does your body feel. So when I say go ahead, we're going to go ahead and close our eyes and go through this activity. So think of any fun time you've ever had with one of your clients. If you don't currently have any clients or you haven't yet worked with clients, you can just make something up. But go ahead and close your eyes. Picture yourself with the client and the fun activity that you're doing. And start noticing within that activity what emotions you're feeling, what emotions the client is feeling, what the energy level is like. As you're watching yourself, the self that you're watching, how does it physiologically feel? And then I also want you to notice yourself sitting here watching this activity play out, how you're feeling, what emotions are you feeling? Physiologically, how are you feeling? How is your heart beating? How does your body feel? And I'm going to stop talking for about 15 seconds and let you just really notice all of these things. Okay, go ahead and open your eyes. And then if you're comfortable with it, share in the chat for me what things were coming up for you. What activity did you play? What was the energy level like? What emotions were you and your client feeling? How were you physiologically feeling? All of the things around the activity. Share as much of that as you would like. And then I also would love for you to share with me what you are noticing about yourself in the moment as you were watching this activity play out. For some reason, I can't see the chat anymore, and I don't know why. Let's see. I can see things coming through like shared enjoyment.
I can read them out to you if you like, Megan.
That would be great. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay. Sorry, they're coming through fast. And John says, it made me realize, oh, sorry, just give me a moment. So Lauren says, following the rules of a soccer game made up by my client, high energy and laughing, chasing. Alison said we were flying, where I would spin the kiddo around and plop him on the couch. We were both deep, belly laughing the whole time, such a place of joy. Luba says playing peekaboo. Goodness, they're coming through so fast. Playing peekaboo from behind the TV. I felt high energy, connection through shared emotions, closeness with the client. Marie was focusing on jumping on the trampoline, shared connection and smiles and laughter. Vijayta, I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong, playing in the play gym and enjoying the child's laughter and engagement. Dr. Missy shared enjoyment, laughter. Bree was saying we were playing hullabaloo. The anticipation of the next step in play would have the client giggling and running back and forth to me. Lots of smiling and laughing for both of us. Kimberly, I was feeling a lot of adrenaline during the activity, paying very close attention to the client's reactions, a lot of energy and flexibility. Kaylee was thinking about the interaction. She felt sad that she no longer is working one-to-one with the kids and started to feel nostalgic for working as a line therapist. There's lots more. Will I keep going?
No, that's good. I was watching them kind of come through. I can't see all of them.
Okay.
I would like, if anyone's comfortable with it, for a couple of comments on how you felt doing that activity. So right now in this moment, how are you feeling as you, I heard one about nostalgic for being a line therapist again. What other feelings were you having, especially like physiologically? How was your heart beating? Were you calm, excited, nervous, anxious? Like what was going on for you? Just watching that play out. Calm and excited at the same time. I'll only be able to see whatever little preview comes through, but I don't know why it changed on me. Does anybody else want to share how they felt? All right, just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and keep going. So generally, when I do this activity with people, when I first developed this workshop, it was in person, so it was a little bit easier. We actually did the activities with each other. We didn't do imagery. People report feeling pretty calm, happy, joyful. They just really enjoy this activity, especially when we first started doing this, when COVID was happening and people didn't even get to see their clients. A few people felt very emotional about that, you know, just having those memories of, you know, interacting with their clients again. Thankfully, most of us are back in action and actually get to see our clients now, so that's good. We're going to do one more imagery activity. And for this one, we're going to do a teaching practice. When I tell you to, you're going to close your eyes again. This one is going to be a little bit different. It's sort of a role play because I'm going to pretend to be your supervisor and I'm going to instruct you on a task with your clients. And when I tell you to, you'll close your eyes and picture yourself with the client. So this is just me pretending. I'm not actually instructing people in real life to do these things, but for the purposes of this exercise, I'm telling you all to do this now. Hello. Today, we are going to teach our clients to follow instructions. When you join your clients in your imagery, you will present the demand to imitate clapping hands, and you will follow these steps. Sit in front of your client, say, do this, and then clap your hands. Immediately take your client's hands and help them clap. If the client resists you, I want you to repeat the instruction and do it again. If the client runs away, kicks you, or engages in any other attempts to leave your instruction, continue to say, do this, model clapping your hands, and then make the client clap their hands. You are bigger than the client, and you should be able to force them to clap their hands. They must learn when an instruction is presented, they need to follow it. So I want you to go ahead and close your eyes and let the activity play out in front of you and focus on the same things as we did before. As you're prompting your client to clap their hands, the client is resisting, okay? At no point in this imagery does the client actually clap their hands. The whole entire time you're trying to do what I've instructed you, you're following them around the room and you're physically trying to get them to clap their hands. As you watch that play out, what emotions are you and the client feeling in the activity? What is the energy level like in the activity? How do you physiologically feel? And then also notice in this moment, as you're watching it play out, real life you, how do you feel? What emotions are you feeling physiologically? How are you feeling? How is your heart beating? And how does your body feel? So please go ahead and close your eyes and picture yourself walking into the room. Sitting down in front of the client, you're going to say clap hands, model clapping your hands. The client doesn't clap their hands. You physically try to guide them. They resist you and pull back. I'm going to stop talking for the next 15 seconds to allow you to let the imagery play out, and I want you to notice the emotions and physiological feelings. Okay, it's been about 15 seconds. You can go ahead and open your eyes, and then anyone who's comfortable, please share in the chat how you are feeling. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop the screen share so I can just see the chat this time. Let's see. I feel gross and defeated, low energy, frustrated, tightening chest, frustrated, power struggle, anxious for sure, unhappy, frustrated, tense, very uncomfortable, it doesn't feel right, guilt, not fun, anxious, not happy, uncomfortable. The student begins to get upset because you are physically forcing them to respond. I feel upset and angry because I'm extremely uncomfortable forcing a student to demonstrate a behavior. Feels like, what's the point? Tug of war, uncomfortable, goes against my gut. Guilt and frustration for creating an adverse situation for the learner, sad that I'm creating this situation and upset that I cannot enjoy. Client and I feel uncomfortable, the energy level is chaotic. In the activity, I feel anxious. Right now, my heart rate is escalated and I feel sad at the thought these types of programs are being implemented with clients. We should follow the child's lead. Feels cold, less effective therapist at the moment, and sad. Thank you everyone for participating so actively in that exercise. Feel free to continue to type in how what was coming up for you as we did that. I'm going to bring the slides back up. So this is pretty typical when I do this activity with everyone. The pairing activity is very happy and joyful, and then this teaching activity with escape extinction is very uncomfortable and very nervous, anxious. All of those types of feelings and emotions come up for everyone. So why am I including this exercise within our presentation today? To build that contrast and just practice here in this presentation between building a relationship and teaching using extinction. Usually with the relationship imagery, we have everyone is feeling calm, joyful, there's low stress. But then when we go into teaching using extinction, if we feel stressed, just during this imagery exercise, just picturing it, how do our clients feel during teaching if we're using escape extinction during our teaching? And how does an interaction like this affect the work we are doing to build a strong teaching relationship with our learners? If we're building up and having all of this fun, and then all of a sudden we come in as this aversive thing when we go into presenting escape extinction, if a client resists an instruction. It's also important to note that stress lowers performance. So one example to look at if you want more information on this is Mercado and Sequeira 2018. And I know we're behavior analysts and we love our research. I think we can all also touch base with our own lived experiences right now and going through COVID. We all know we have not been as productive or effective during this stressful time. Why would we want to create teaching settings where that's a constant for our learners? That doesn't make any sense. Our goal is to increase skill acquisition. So why would we do that under stressful conditions? We should be trying to create environments that are joyful and happy and low stress so skills can be acquired more quickly. And that's what hopefully you'll be able to walk away with after this presentation today, some ideas around how to set up those environments more often for your learners. Another thing that's important to note when we're looking at this exercise is the cycle of abuse. This was initially presented by Walker in 1979. So these are the 4 steps in that cycle. The first is tension building, and the description, tensions increase and break down in communication. How does that translate to escape extinction? Demands are presented with little to no explanation given, and little to no support given. I know in my own training, when I first started in the field, this is exactly what we would do. We never sat down with the child and said, hey, we're gonna do a few things and then we'll play. There were no explanations given. And then once the child resisted, there was never an explanation like, oh, this might be hard for you. It was the opposite. We were told to not say anything at all and just continue to present the demand over and over and over. And that, again, very much mirrors the tension building that we would see in a cycle of abuse. The incident happens, so the description would be verbal, emotional, and physical abuse, anger, blaming, arguing, threats, and intimidation. And I know a lot of us would like to think we're not doing those types of things with the practice that we're engaging in. However, when we are asked to engage in escape extinction, we are doing a little bit of this. Physically guiding with force happens quite a bit to complete a demand. Verbally repeating until the instruction is followed could tie in with that verbal piece of it, just over and over and over saying the same thing. And then the biggest one is withholding attention and support, going into this like almost robot. I used to teach people, be like a statue, it's almost like a robotic statue type thing where we're no longer human and we're just there to make them do the thing. So that withholding attention and support is really big, especially with advancements that have been made in neuroscience research and understanding how we can help people learn to navigate these difficult situations. The next step is reconciliation. So apologies occur. There may be blaming of the victim, giving excuses, giving gifts, and talking sweetly. The translation to escape extinction, fun resumes and the focus on relationship and rapport building happens again. And in our field, we've really normalized extinction procedures and making excuses for using them that often do involve blaming the learner. Like, oh, they just need to understand that they have to do what we ask them to. Eventually, if we do it enough times, they'll break and they'll just do it. I've had people say those things and talk about that. I've also had numerous messages in my inboxes of people being told they're soft and that they're not cut out for behavior analysis when they don't want to use escape extinction. So even for the people in our field that are trying to practice in more humane ways, they're butting up against people that don't want to do that. And then lastly, calm occurs. The incident is forgotten. No abuse is taking place. How does that translate to escape extinction? We continue our intervention as usual and no reflection on how to better support the learner occurs for the future. Again, I've seen numerous cases where escape extinction procedures have been in place for years with children and adults, with being forced physically to do various things, and nothing has, their graphs aren't changing at all. Their data is still high. They're still engaging in a lot of escape behavior, and no reflection is being given as to why that's happening and how we can do things differently and better support the learner. So before I talk about the standard protocol, I do just want to give a disclaimer. This previous slide, this is my opinion and this is my perspective on it. This is when I see the cycle of abuse, how I would translate it into escape extinction. So far, there hasn't been published research to explicitly say, you know, this is mirroring exactly the cycle of abuse. However, for me as a practitioner, do I want to be engaging in practices that could be lined up this way? I haven't used escape extinction for probably about 10 years now, but I want to implore all of you to think about that. Are you wanting to use procedures that you could line up this way and say, you know, oh, this lines up with the cycle of abuse? When there's better options out there, I don't want to take the risk that I would be causing that kind of harm to anyone that I'm serving. That's not what I'm here for. So this is more of an exercise for you to see how important it is to think about, just because a graph might change eventually, or there's a published study or something out there, just because something is potentially effective doesn't necessarily mean that it's ethical or acceptable. We have to be exploring and analyzing what the bigger picture is. And for anyone, we'll potentially get to the research slides, but for anyone who needs more of a discussion on extinction, there is a link at the end of the slides that I created that has a whole entire Google document of different trainings and resources on escape extinction and extinction in general. And you'd probably be surprised to find out that a lot of the research that's been done on extinction, especially escape extinction, has not been done in the context of one-on-one service intervention or in the schools. It's been done on really significant inpatient settings and also with feeding. So we have to think about that when we're looking at the work that we're doing. A lot of people, again, will contact me and say, hey, I'm trying to use better procedures and my supervisor won't let me, or the person running this business won't let me because escape extinction is evidence-based. But when you ask them to provide the studies that it's evidence-based in the context that we're working, you're going to be hard pressed to find those studies, because I for one, I've done a ton of literature review on this. I haven't been able to find them. There's been a lot of extrapolation of people taking the research that's been done with other aspects of extinction and trying to apply it in the context of one-on-one, whether it's centers or in-home and then school settings. There was a question about if the slides were shared. I did share them with a link, but I'll share them again after when I get to a next stopping point. Okay, so let's talk about the standard protocol for just teaching. We kind of did this with the imagery exercise, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. I also want to give the disclaimer: when we're going through all of this information today, and the presentations that I do are based around what I've been talking about: one-on-one, in-home, clinic-based instruction, a school setting, where the main focus is skill acquisition, okay? Because a lot of us are being asked to do things in environments where we're supposed to be teaching skills that don't align with that. So when you're looking at what we're talking about today, make sure you're looking at it in that context. So for example, let's say you have a 2-year-old client who's instructed to sit and stack rings. The child pulls away and lets out a scream. The adult grabs the child and sits them down in front of the ring stacker and holds a ring in the child's hand and forces the child to put the ring on the ring stacker. The child cries and then puts the ring on the stacker by himself and tries to leave. The adult grabs the child again and instructs to keep stacking the rings. The child throws themselves back to try to hit their head on the ground. The adult blocks this and directs the child to stack the ring. The child is forced to stack the ring again. The adult praises the child and lets the child leave. The child stands up quickly and runs away from the adult. So based on this description, take a few seconds and type in the chat. I want, just looking at this, don't think about what they're trying to teach the child. It's obvious they're trying to teach the child to play with the ring stacker. But what, in this chain of responses that are happening and the experience that the child is having, what is the child actually learning in this scenario? So go ahead and type in the chat what your thoughts are there. Amanda said this isn't play at all. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share for a second so I can see. You have to do whatever I say. You do what I do no matter what. You'll be forced to do things. Escape. Compliance demands are not fun. Stacking ring is aversive. They have no autonomy. The adult is aversive. Following instruction. Compliance with adults. Complete the activity. Learning is not fun. Or severe behavior to escape. We don't care if you consent. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. These are all wonderful, excellent observations. I'm going to go ahead and post the link. This should be the link to the English version of the slides for those of you. You might have to scroll since there's comments coming through, but let me know if that doesn't work. I think you all, pretty much captured the main points that I typically talk about. So what is being taught? First, creation of more intensive, challenging behavior. The child initially screamed and then escalated to an attempt at self-injury. So if they had just honored the child's self-advocacy with that initial scream and said, oh, it looks like you don't want to do the ring stackers right now, let's find something else, then that would be it. There wouldn't be this longer chain developing where the child attempts to headbang. This adult is creating a new challenging behavior, and oftentimes we don't recognize our role in that. I've had, again, cases where children go into ABA programs with little to no challenging behavior. And after a week or two of intervention, there's all of a sudden a huge need for a behavior intervention plan. And some have a 2-on-1 at 3 years old for all things that the adults created because they didn't reinforce the child's self-advocacy and help them learn how to navigate things. The child's also having the suppression of initiation and play behavior. So the adult is forcing the child to play with the ring stacker instead of following the child's lead. The child is not given the opportunity to initiate with other items, and his attempts to initiate are blocked. So when that happens, again, from just a chain of responding, keeping it simple, what we're teaching the child is if you try to do things within your environment, that's going to be stopped. You can only do the things we tell you to do and show you to do. And then we wonder why over time, a lot of our learners might go into school or turn into adults who don't initiate and aren't spontaneous in their behavior, because all of their attempts to initiate and be spontaneous when they were little were blocked and redirected to something else. And then lastly, you're suppressing self-advocacy. So the child is trying to advocate for themselves, and this is ignored. And this could lead to the suppressing of the response altogether. So over time, it turns into a learned helplessness situation. If they try to advocate for themselves and it's not honored, then eventually they might just always do what everyone tells them to do instead of advocating for themselves when needed. There could be other things happening. These are the 3 main points that I like to highlight in that example. I saw a few comments coming through the chat, and I'll look at those as we watch this next video. So here is a supportive alternative, and the link to this is at the bottom of the slide. I'm not sure why I lost my links on the other slides, but I'll try to get those back for you. I'm going to show it in the player here, so you all will see it in here. But in this video,
through what's happening. So I'll do a little bit of a debrief, but just listen to the explanation that I'm giving. And I'm going to try muting myself as the video plays to see if we can get rid of that echo. Thank you, Rama. Okay, so could you all hear it or no? You can hear it? Okay. Real quick, is there any reason why Rama wouldn't have been able to? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set it back where it was then. It might play a little bit more again, sorry.
Okay, so it looks like for some people they weren't able to hear the video, but most people were able to, so I let it keep playing. But basically what you saw, I'll debrief on that in the slides in a second. And there was one question in the chat I just wanted to address. A couple people asked what to do if you have supervisors that are recommending escape extinction. First, I would share with them the link at the end of the slides, and I'll try to drop it in the chat here on the next video with all of the resources I've created or others have created on alternatives to extinction, and ask if you could go through those resources together and discuss it. If that doesn't work, feel free to email me and we can brainstorm a little bit more about it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put the slides back up. Talk about the video. So just a quick recap. One thing I forgot to mention, because I usually say it beforehand and I just forgot. Some people ask when he comes to sit on my lap if I was physically forcing him there. It kind of looks like it in the video, but I know because I was there that I wasn't. He wanted to sit on my lap and I was just helping him sit down. I know in the video it kind of looks a little bit, it's hard to tell. But anyway, this response was unique to Taylor and his needs in that moment. For example, I didn't give him the juice, but he hadn't already had, like, he didn't just eat a bunch of salty food or something. If he had just eaten a bunch of salty food, I probably would have given him the juice. So when I'm looking at things, I'm just constantly evaluating the costs and the benefits and what needs to be done to support the person in that moment. He could leave at any time. So while I was helping encourage him to set the truck down nicely, because that was a skill he needed to learn. And I forgot to say this too. The reason we were working on it, he was in daycare. He was around other children. If he's just randomly throwing toys, which is what happened right before I started taking the video, he could hurt someone. So we needed him to learn. He was in a typical toddler phase that they go through of wanting to just throw everything for fun. So we were teaching him, we can throw balls. We don't throw toys. We set our toys down nicely. So he could leave at any time, but I was still going to have him practice setting the truck down nicely whenever he came back. Notice how when I did talk to him about what was going on, I didn't just block and redirect him. I did limit my language, especially kind of in the middle towards the end there, because I was, again, in the moment, just trying to balance making sure to support him, but not get us off track of what we were focusing on doing. The other thing I like to point out about this video is he stays fairly regulated. He says no and he whines a little bit, but he doesn't, start crying. He doesn't really get that upset. What I would do if that happened, I would have increased my support. And that's different than what a lot of us are trained to do and what I was trained to do when I first started in the field. Often we're taught if a child is having a difficult time, to that just ignore them and then, continue the demand and all of those types of things. For the way that we approach things, we're trying to work with the person and support them. And at some point, it's always possible, we all been there, people might reach a state where they're too far gone, they're too escalated. And in that point, after I've been as supportive as possible, we've tried to keep things going. If there's a demonstration that, oh, he needs some space, he needs a little bit of time to himself to work it out, then I would say, okay, when you're ready, I'll come back and let the space happen. I don't have a video example of that, but that's the cycle that I follow. It's support, provide as much support as possible, help work through it together. And if we reach a point where we just can't work through it in that moment, that's when I would, walk away. Or if the child needs, I might just sit there and hold if they need that type of comfort as well. And we reset and start again once everybody's back to a place where they can willingly participate calmly. So this slide's a little bit off because I'm having to use Keynote on my older computer, so I apologize for that. But this says true functional assessment and functional analysis. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what is functional assessment and functional analysis. Make sure we're all on the same page. This says, look at all this data. What in the world does it mean? And then the penguin says, I don't have a clue, but look. I've encountered a lot of situations where people are collecting all sorts of data, but they're not analyzing it. They don't have any idea what's going on or why they're doing what they're doing. So try not to be that person. So this is a quote from an article that Dr. Hanley wrote in Behavior Analysis in Practice in 2012. I highly recommend reading it. If you haven't, there's the reference to it is on one of the last slides. It says, I don't know why you have been behaving in that extraordinary manner, but I will take some time to find out why and incorporate those factors into all attempts to change your behavior. And the reason I like this isn't the last part, it's the beginning here. I will take some time to find out why and incorporate those factors. That means all the things that could be happening that are resulting in this extraordinary behavior occurring. I'm going to look at all of that. I'm not just looking at the function. I'm not just looking at what's happening right after you engage in that challenging behavior. I'm going to figure out the whole entire context, what's going on here. And when we talk about the 3 steps to compassion at the end, I'll explain how to do that. But just to make sure we're all on the same page, when we're looking at functional analysis, it is part of the functional assessment process. It requires manipulation of variables within the environment to determine their effect on behavior. That's it. That's the simple definition of functional analysis. It's not Iwata's conditions that you learn about in class and memorize for the exam. It doesn't have to include all of those things. It's simply just manipulating variables within the environment to determine their effect on behavior. If you're doing that and you're collecting data in a controlled way, you're engaging in functional analysis. And for more information on this, obviously the work that Dr. Hanley's been doing on practical functional assessment and skills-based treatment, you can read a lot of his articles and really get a better understanding of different ways that you can synthesize these different variables and figure out what the effect is on behavior. For today's talk, we're not going to go into a whole lot of detail because I only have 2 hours and I have to prioritize. But the reason I bring this up is because in the work that I've done, and probably that all of you have been doing, I have noticed that function isn't the only thing that matters. That's me saying that. I'm sure others have said it as well. When our field was younger, when Dr. Iwata was first doing research on functional analysis and publishing that information, he was tasked with figuring out, a more standardized process for identifying why people are engaging in the behaviors that they're engaging in. Prior to that, it was a lot of guesswork and a lot more similar to behavior modification where people were just kind of doing random things. Thankfully, he did his amazing research and we had a standardized process where we could figure out why people are doing what they're doing and we could isolate things down. What I've observed, though, is it seems the pendulum swung too far. We went from not trying to understand it at all to only focusing on that. And instead of looking at this middle ground where, yes, we need to understand what consequences are occurring and what could be maintaining challenging behavior, we also need to be looking at so much more than that. We need to be looking at the context around the learner, what skill deficits are present, so many other things. And at the end, when I talk about the 3 steps to compassion, we'll talk about what those things are. For now, I'm just going to show you an example. So this is an example of a client. I call this breaking the chain in practice. This little guy, when I first met him, he was engaging in a lot of head banging behavior, 100 times per day, some days, where any little thing that would happen that was he perceived and experienced as aversive, he would immediately drop to the ground and bang his head backwards or like bang it into a wall. So we worked with him and teaching him how to engage in a calm response and like keep his body calm, even when negative things were happening. And that's just a skill we all need as humans to be able to navigate when difficult things are happening. However, we were still seeing sometimes once a day, sometimes a little bit less than that, where he would still engage in head banging, even though he had developed this replacement and generally was navigating things a lot better. And what we observed was there were times where he was just legitimately mad and we hadn't taught him how to show us that he was mad. And so his go-to, his, just chain for him, like his own responding was to headbang. That was how he was showing that he was mad. So now we had to teach him how to show that he was mad, and also how to go back and forth between those different emotional states of being calm and being mad and doing all of those things without throwing a headbang in there at the same time. The reason I show this video, these two videos, is to show you how we can work on that. And also, though, to show you that this is a situation where we could have done functional analyses, collected all sorts of ABC data, looked at as many consequences and antecedents as we wanted to. It would not have mattered. Any plan we would have put into place, whether it involved extinction or differential reinforcement, anything. Even potentially you could get a little bit creative with functional communication training, but with the way that functional communication training is typically done, even that wouldn't have necessarily been effective for him, because he needed practice with learning how to be mad. And a lot of our typical procedures don't have examples of that. They don't include that, and it gets missed. So if I had just focused on functional analysis and the consequences, this poor guy would have just continued to engage in headbanging, and probably in a more stressful situation, because he wouldn't have had the support. When he engaged in headbanging, potential things might have gotten removed from the environment as a consequence for the headbanging, and of course he would be injuring himself. So this is an example where if you only focused on function, you would be setting up a situation where you're not going to be successful or effective, and more problems could develop. So I'm going to switch over to the videos again. So this first video, hopefully it'll let me play it. Okay, this first video is just that practice of calm and mad, and you can see mom practicing with him and his brother.
Okay, so I don't know what it is where most people can hear. I think maybe if you're on a phone, maybe that's why. But if I keep myself unmuted, then there's like a really bad echo. So I'll just kind of do a quick debrief for you. But basically she was just using the ball and showing calm with the ball. And then she was showing them different things they could do when they're mad, like stomping their feet or making fists and things like that. And she was talking to them about that. So there's a question about, is this DRA? This video example is teaching. It's just explicitly teaching different responses. If you then took these responses and went into an actual behavior plan, it could be DRA. You might say, for depending on what response he shows when he's mad, it could be DRI if he can't headbang and do that response at the same time. But most of it's differential reinforcement of alternative behavior, and you'll see that in the next video. So in this next video, now that mom has practiced with him, what are some things you can do when you're calm, and what are some things you're going to do when you're mad? She's taking this over into practice with a real life situation. So she has some toys on the table, and one of the things that he was typically getting mad about was when he would ask for something and couldn't have it. You saw he has a little brother, so you know he can't always get what he wants, and he needs to learn how to navigate that. So in this, mom is going to coach him and prompt right away what to do when he's mad, when she denies access to the item that he's wanting. A lot of us would be taught not to do that. We'd be taught to present the trial, wait for the kid to get upset, and like if they do engage in the replacement behavior, they can contact reinforcement, and if they don't contact reinforcement. I don't understand why that's the case. We use prompting and we explicitly teach all of our other skills. We do it for matching, for labeling, for requesting. Why wouldn't we do that when we're working on helping children learn the replacement behaviors? So in this, you'll also see that at some point when she initially tells him that he can't have the item, he goes and he looks at that green chair like he's going to headbang. And right before he has an opportunity to do that, mom prompts him what to do when he's mad. One thing to also notice is that mom has a very strong teaching relationship with him. He listens to her right away. He enjoys being with her. So that brings us back to the slides from the beginning of today that I was talking about. You have to put that effort in to developing yourself as a strong, trusted, connected relationship with the people that you're teaching. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to do these types of things to support them in learning how to navigate difficult situations.
When you're feeling so mad.
And then just a quick recap for those of you who were watching maybe from a device that you can't hear. So she practices with him, the mad. He, I guess it was a give trial, not a denial, but either way, both of those things upset him. So she asked him to give octopus. He said no. And she said, yes, give octopus. And then before he could engage in headbanging, she said, what can you do when you're mad? And then he says he feels better. So now, not all the time, like sometimes when he would say no, she would honor that. We vary it. We have to vary it with this guy, especially because he learns routines really quickly and change responses really fast. So if she honored it every single time, just like in real life, or if she honored it every single time, it wouldn't be like real life. Sometimes he needs to give up items, especially with having a little brother that he has to share with. So this was one of the things we were practicing with him there. All right, I'm going to go back to the slides. Okay, so I already went through this description. He was a 5-year-old client who engaged in high rates of self-injurious behavior. We taught him how to stay calm during situations that were stressful. The self-injury decreased, but it was still happening when he was mad about something such as breaking a toy. So his skill deficit was demonstrating mad. The chain that he was engaging in, it was events happen that make him mad, and then eventually he would bang his head on the ground. So in this example, the consequence didn't matter. Items could be withheld, attention could be withheld. He would still continue to bang his head until he learns a new chain of responding. So I already went through what the videos were as well. So this is the opposite of what we are typically trained to do. Why are we ignoring learners during times where they need our support and coaching? We use errorless methods to teach all other skills. Why are we not doing more of this during teaching the replacement behaviors? If mom had not prompted him right when she did, he would have engaged in self-injury. It's very important to practice these replacements during neutral times to help compete with the learning history that already exists and to establish a new chain of responding. All right, I think we have time. We're going to try it to go through the ethical alternatives to traditional escape extinction and look at the research a little bit. So for traditional escape extinction, just to make sure we're all on the same page, what typically happens is we prompt the learner to complete the presented demand using physical or verbal prompts. And there's quite a few potential problems that could result. These are 4 of the common ones. First, it's blindly applied with no assessment done. Second, it can turn into a battle between the adult and the learner. There's side effects of forcing compliance that we've talked about in the previous slides. And then treatment integrity. Outside of our field, a lot of people don't engage in this type of interaction with others. Some ethical considerations, non-compliance can be multiply maintained. So when learners are trying to escape something, there could be multiple reasons that that's happening for them. Physical guidance can increase problem behavior and counter aggression. And there's several different articles here that talk about that, which is also interesting in the research when people say escape extinction is evidence-based. This is all in those articles, yet no one ever talks about that part. If they do, it's like a quick, oh, it gets better before it gets worse. Like it's just part of being in this field. And no consideration is given to, does this learner actually need to go through that? What's the human experience like for that person? A lot of focus is put on the interventionist or the adult providing the intervention and like how they just have to tough it out. But there's no discussion around the poor person who's experiencing the intervention. And parents and caregivers are likely, they're not likely to use traditional procedures. If we want to look at this from our ethics code standpoint, from the current code, not the one that's coming out in 2022, these are a few of the areas that apply. So 1.01, reliance on scientific knowledge. I already mentioned that the research that's out there on extinction isn't in the context of the place where most of us work at this point. And then Dr. Hanley's research, and there's other newer research articles on differential reinforcement without extinction that have come out as well. So if we're relying on scientific knowledge, we would know that we don't need to be using extinction procedures. 2.09, treatment intervention efficacy. Same thing, kind of ties in with the scientific knowledge. There's additional research that's been done over the years to show that we can be just as effective without relying on extinction. 4.02, involving clients in planning and consent. So a lot of the learners that we work with, if they're saying no and trying to get away from us, I'm pretty sure we don't have their consent for doing these procedures. And the new code talks more clearly about needing to have assent as well, which is more clear that we would have active engagement from the learners. And if they're resisting something, we need to figure out a different way. 4.07, environmental conditions that interfere with implementation. Again, a lot of other people aren't open to engaging with other humans in this way that we're required to when we use extinction procedures. And then lastly, 4.09, least restrictive procedures. So we should be using the procedures that are the least restrictive. We should not be putting hands on people to make them do things, especially as a first step. That doesn't mean you might never get to that point. There might be extreme situations where that happens, especially for safety, but it should not be your first step to just put hands on learners and make them do stuff. So here's some of the information on the research on alternatives. There's this book that I co-authored with Robert Schramm, The 7 Steps to Earning Instructional Control, and we're working on a second edition, hopefully to be done in the next few months, to update and revise things based on what both of us have learned over the years, and to make sure we're really focusing the most on developing that trusted and connected relationship and limiting anything that could be coercive in nature. Sua, yes, the book is available online. I'll try to put it in the chat during the next video. So I did this study a long time ago at this point, where I was looking at, can training on the 7 steps of earning instructional control reduce noncompliance behavior during one-on-one ABA sessions where the current protocol is to use force prompts and pace prompts. And I've left the term noncompliance in here for this particular presentation just because that's what the actual focus was of the study at that time. I don't use the phrase noncompliance anymore in my day-to-day practice. We can talk about that later. I'm not going to go on a big thing on it, but it's not preferred. Participants, we had 2 boys that had an autism diagnosis. They were both 4 years old, and they were receiving center-based ABA intervention 2 days per week. There were 3 tutors working with the boys, and they all had at least 1 year experience providing ABA, and they were trained by the center. The setting was a center in Virginia, typical therapy room, table, 2 chairs, programming materials, and toys. The target behavior, like I said, at the time we called it noncompliance, but the behaviors were observed after presentation of a demand. For Justin, it was failure to respond within 5 seconds, leaving or attempting to leave the work area, quickly grabbing at cards or materials, pushing or throwing materials. And for Will, it was the same as above, and also negative statements such as no or I don't know, whining, making noises, and taking deep breaths, which are all, wonderful things to be doing. But at the time when we did this study, we were those were all things that weren't as recognized as like good, unfortunately. Okay, so the method, it was a multiple baseline design, 28 scheduled sessions. We had the dependent variable was the total duration of non-compliance behavior in a 5-minute video sample. And the independent variable was the type of procedure used. So baseline, which was forced and pace prompting, and then intervention was the 7 steps of earning instructional control. For baseline, we followed the current procedures they had in place. For intervention, I did a 1-hour training with the tutors about the 7 steps using behavioral skills training. I gave them feedback via video clips of their sessions, and then they implemented the 7 steps. So I'm going to show you the baseline video. This is a short video clip of the learner prior to training the staff on the 7 steps. Notice the child's level of engagement and attempts to leave the learning environment, and notice how the table and chair is positioned against the wall. Think about, what is the child motivated to do in this video? Okay, so I'm not going to switch back to the PowerPoint, but if anyone wants to write in the chat what they think this little guy was motivated to do, feel free to type that in. I'll go ahead and tell you, at least my observation is he was highly motivated to not be there, to crawl around the room and have fun in that way, and not sit there and participate with the teacher. So we did the training with her, and this is what it looked like afterwards. Notice where the table and chair is, and notice the higher level of active engagement and just like positive affect for both of them in this video.
So hopefully you can see how he stays with her and he's actually initiating with her and having her engage with him. And she's much more tuned in and observing him as well. Instead of just saying, do this and clapping her hands, she notices she doesn't have him. He's not actively engaged and she waits, pulls the toy back just a little bit, and then presents the instruction. Also notice on the table, there's all sorts of toys and fun stuff. Everything is present, just interspersing the instructions. And then if they're distracting him, she can pull it back a little bit just to get his attention again. There's one more video I want to show you with this, and then I'll go back to the slides. So this is an example of when he's not like he leaves the teaching setting, how she responds to that. This is another one of his tutors. It's a different one. But notice she doesn't go and pick him up and bring him back to the table. Notice what she does instead. I also want you to think about, you can see his communication isn't really present. Like there's gestures and approaches that he's doing, but he doesn't have vocal language. They're not working on sign or PECs or anything like that with him. So think about it, you know, what is he trying to communicate with her and leaving and then coming back to the table?
So, bubbles for myself. Here we go. Ooh. It's a toy. That's so great. So cool. Ready? It's like you want some bubbles, Jess. Here we go. Which one is red? Cool, Jackson. That's awesome. Have some more bubbles because you did awesome.
Oh, I forgot to mute myself that time. Sorry, y'all. Yes, so he's all done with the circle toy, and he's interested in the bubbles. Perfect. So she picks up on that, but it takes her a little bit longer. She's focused on the circle toy and doesn't quite pick up that he's ready for something different.
So obviously with a learner with where his skills are from a skill deficit standpoint, they should probably be focusing more on his communication so he doesn't have to just leave to get them to notice things about what he's wanting. There was a question in the chat about what is a preferred term for non-compliance. Honestly, it would depend on the context and what's going on, because in a lot of situations, it's more self-advocacy than anything. It's indicating to others in the environment that like something's not right here. And maybe there's, you know, sounds that need to go. Maybe there's demands that are too hard. It's hard to say what the thing would be, but a lot of times, I mean, we all do it for ourselves all the time where we shift and change things about our environment, but we have a way to communicate that people understand. So, so the preference is, instead of saying non-compliance, because it's not really about that, is to really look at the full context of what's happening and talk about it in that way. All right, so I'm going to flip through these slides real quick now that we're back. So I already showed you the intervention video, but I wanted to note for you one last thing that I forgot to mention on that, which was how he clapped his hands correctly. They were working on this skill for 1 year, and it wasn't until they implemented the 7 steps that the child performed it correctly. So think about all of the skills that he wasn't mastering and acquiring over time that he could have mastered if they had been attending more to his motivation and having that active engagement. And then in the non-compliance video, she was observing the child and basing her responding off of what he was doing. We already talked about the lack of communication. Okay, so this is the results from the study. Justin, his baseline average of escape was 99 seconds in a 5-minute sample. His intervention average was 32 seconds, so there was a big difference there. For Will, 71.5 and then 39.25. So again, another big difference. This is what the data looks like graph. So you can see in baseline, it's consistently high for Justin. And then for Will, it started off actually kind of low and then it just goes up over time. For Justin, you can see there are a couple of data points that are higher, but I'm going to show you a second graph to explain those. But by the end, he was down here pretty low. And then same for Will, he was down to this level at the end as well. What we noticed when we graphed this, though, I was also taking integrity data. One of my questions about the 7 steps was, are all 7 steps really necessary? And the escape-related behavior was higher during the sessions when the integrity checklist was not at 100%. Even when the steps were followed at 90%, escape responding increased. So this is the data with the graph, the integrity percentage overlaid. So this black here is the integrity percentage, and it does go up a little bit, but it's still below 50% during baseline. And you can see as it's going up, his non-compliance is coming down. And then even in intervention, when the integrity was up here, was all the way at 90%, or sorry, 75%. 90%. I'm like not reading my graph well. The 90% up here, his escape behavior was high. But once they got to 100%, his escape behavior drops down. The integrity drops down, his escape behavior comes up. Integrity goes up to 100, escape behavior drops down. Integrity drops down again, escape behavior goes up. Integrity stays high, escape behavior stays low. So it just goes to show the importance of having all of the steps present. And for today's presentation, I'm not talking about the 7 steps because there's just not enough time, but there are resources for you on the end slides that go over that. Okay, so just some quick research for you. I'm not going to have time to go through each of these in detail because I want to make sure we get through shaping and the 3 steps to compassion. But you can read through these slides and check out these articles and then contact me if you have questions. I will just summarize them though, just so you know, all the way since the early 90s, there's been research showing the side effects and what the issues are with extinction and what alternatives we could be using. So Lerman, Awada, and Wallace in 92 showed that bursts or increases in aggression occurred in nearly half of the cases that involved extinction. And they recommended identifying strategies to reduce these side effects, to include potentially not using extinction. Piazza, Mose, and Fisher in 96 recognized issues with traditional escape extinction and the extinction burst, and they showed that differential reinforcement of alternative responding and demand fading could be used without needing extinction. Hoke, McComas, Thomas, and Payon in 2002 showed that you could have behavior change without extinction. They had learners take a break with a tangible and take a break without a tangible and assessed that. And then Ringdahl in 2002 published on the effectiveness of DRA and demand fading. Note how old these articles are. And there's been additional research conducted since then, but we've known about this for a really long time, yet somehow extinction procedures are what is so often used. I'm not going to go through these because, like I said, we don't have a ton of time, but feel free to look at those and let me know if you have questions. The current applied research, which isn't even that current anymore, it's from 2011, but Iser de Leon presented at ABAI Autism in 2011 on using behavioral economics. And they looked at what would learners choose to work for. They offered a reinforcer and they offered taking a break. And the reinforcer was, a tangible item because obviously a break can be a reinforcer as well. They assessed what's called the demand curve to determine the value of escape as a reinforcer. And just to give a quick summary of it without going into too much detail, the preferences they found, some learners needed the break and chose the break no matter how expensive it was. So even if they had to do 100 responses and only had to do 5 responses to get the tangible item, they would still perform it until they got the break instead of taking the tangible item. Some learners continued to choose the tangible, which was an edible, even at high prices. So again, even if they had to do 100 responses to get that tangible item, they would do it, even if they could have a break sooner. The key, though, was having a choice between the break and the edible. And that's what resulted in the highest levels of responding. So this just goes to show the importance when we're working with our learners to make sure that they have autonomy, that they have agency, that they have choice in how we're working with them, and that they're active participants in what we're doing with our interventions. Steve Ward and colleagues in 2017 published a series of case studies in behavior analysis and practice called Task as a Reinforcer, where work is ultimately required and reinforcers are not available until the work is complete. With the 3 case studies, they had 5 children with autism. The general procedure was contingent on escape behavior. Work was removed, which is the opposite of what we typically do, what we're typically trained to do. So the learner started looking off, if they were answering incorrectly without trying, if they tried to get up and leave, any of those types of things, they were told, okay, well, wait till you're ready, and they would just remove the work. And they also didn't have the opportunity to engage with any of the other stimuli in the environment that were reinforcers. When the target ready behavior occurred, they were presented with the work. And this is just a summary from that article. So looking at the range of intrusiveness when looking at escape behavior. So Iwata, Pace, Kalsher, Cowdery, and Cataldo in 1990 used escape extinction with physical guidance. Piazza, Mose, and Fisher had learners contained within a workroom. Verbal and gestural reminders were given. In this study, Steve Ward's study, they were contained at a work table, but no reminders to cooperate and no reinforcers available. And they weren't physically forced to stay at the table. That was just where the learning setting was. And then getting less intrusive, the timeout ribbon from Fox and Shapiro, they were allowed to leave the work area, but denied access to attention and other potential reinforcers. Steve categorizes this as less intrusive. However, I think that withholding of attention piece, and especially the wearing of a ribbon, we might be able to argue is more intrusive if there's peers around. That's a separate discussion we could have. And then contingent attention, Hall, Lund, and Jackson in 1968 would give attention contingent on active engagement. Again, we could explore, what the side effects of that might be as well. There's a lot of discussion that could be had around this table, but this is just to show, based on the authors of the study, this is where they felt their procedure fell on the level of intrusiveness. So how does this relate? At the time, this was the first publication using these alternative procedures. The hypothesis is that task removal functioned as a type 2 punisher, and task presentation functioned as a conditioned reinforcer. So they're changing the function of tasks, like making them reinforcing instead of aversive. And then it provides further support of previously discussed applications. All right, before we move into the 3 steps of compassion, I saw a few things come through the chat, so I'm just going to look real quick. Oh, Todd, what steps were not followed? That's a great question. I did that so long ago. I know from my, just when I do this, when I train others on the 7 steps, typically the step that's difficult is that capturing of motivation and really attending to what the learner's motivated by. That's usually what's missing. And I've had to do whole contracts where they brought me in to do the 7 steps, and instead I focused my whole time teaching them just how to connect with their students. Because if we can't get that piece, like I talked about at the beginning, none of the other pieces matter. If you don't know what is motivating and fun and can't develop a relationship, I can't really help you a whole lot with your other pieces. So that is usually the step that's missing. Okay, so we're going to talk about the 3 steps to compassion. And I'm sorry if I'm going a little fast. I just want to make sure we get through everything. So for me, what I found, I've been presenting on this topic since 2011, maybe a little bit in 2010. I've been practicing this way since 2008. And I've been trying to figure out, I've synthesized and pulled together a bunch of different things. And I had to do a really short podcast once, and she wanted me to talk about this. And I was like, oh my goodness, how will I take things that I usually talk about for days and put it into a 30-minute podcast? So this is what I came up with. These are the things that I think as behavior analysts, we need to make sure we're doing to be compassionate in how we're addressing challenging behavior. So 1 is to be comprehensive, 2 is to make sure we're focusing on the big 4, and 3 is to make sure we're using shaping. So we're going to talk about each of those. So what does be comprehensive mean? First, we need to make sure we're looking at skill deficits. So what skills are missing relating to the big 4? We'll talk about that on a future slide. What skills are missing relating to emotional regulation? And I know that's something that is like up in the air as to whether or not behavior analysts address that or not. It's a skill to learn. There's so many resources on this right now. And I know even one of the things when I've went to some of the schools to consult in Dubai that I loved was seeing so much of that in the classroom, focusing on mindfulness and things like that. And you're starting to see that in Canada and in the States as well. Haven't been to every country, but it seems to be getting pulled in, especially after COVID. So many of us are realizing what deficits all of us have around emotional regulation that maybe we missed out on as children as well. And then what skills are missing in any other areas that would contribute to the challenging behavior persisting. So it might be, if it's around math, there might be skill deficits relating to math. If it's around reading, there might be skill deficits relating to reading. Even things simple like physical motor, like if they're being expected to sit in a chair for long periods of time, what's their core strength like? So there's a lot of different pieces that need to be assessed there. The probability of effective implementation. Is the plan feasible for the family or the classroom? We could come up with the best plan possible, but if it can't be implemented and followed, we shouldn't blame the people. We need to figure out a different plan, and we might need to come up with baby steps to get to the final product. Changing motivation and reinforcers. We need to make sure we're observing the learner and changing how we respond based on their current needs and motivation. You saw that in the video with the 7 steps that I just showed, but it needs to be so much bigger, and you'll see that when I show this shaping video in a minute. And fluency of the replacement behaviors. We need to make sure we're looking at how fluent the replacement behavior is. Even if it seems easier to us, to just take a deep breath instead of throwing our head into a wall, that doesn't mean it's easier for the learner. It doesn't have the same history as the challenging behavior. A lot of the learners we're working with, the responses they're engaging in are stress responses that are immediate for them. It's just 0 to 60. There's no pause point where a new chain could even happen because it's so quick that they engage in that challenging behavior. So we need to make sure we're practicing the replacement behavior during neutral times until it is effortless, just as effortless as whatever response they're currently engaging in. Next, for step 2, we need to make sure we're prioritizing the big 4. This is an article from Ala Rosales et al. In 2018, and it's also in the references. So these are the big 4: communication, gaining attention and affection, engagement in activities, and tolerating, coping with, and accommodating adversity. Okay, I couldn't remember if I had a slide explaining them, so I'll explain them real quick. Communication is your typical, most of us work on this, teaching learners how to communicate. However, we often fail if a learner isn't vocally communicating with signs, or communicating with pictures or a device. We just kind of throw our hands up in the air and leave it at that. Like the one little guy in the 7 steps videos that I showed, people should have been working on understanding him and figuring out what his way of communicating is. We also need to start, this isn't from the article, this is my own soapbox. We need to start looking outside. If you're neurotypical like I am, there might be ways that someone who's neurodiverse is communicating that you don't understand. And it's not appropriate for us to force them to communicate just like I would. It's on me as the person helping them to figure out how they're communicating and start there and understanding their communication, and then build to hopefully get to the point where we can both understand each other. Gaining attention and affection. This is, often part of communication, but it's its own separate area, because a lot of the times when challenging behavior is occurring, there's some type of skill deficit around this. A learner needs attention from someone in their environment, and that's the only way they've been able to get it. They want affection, hugs, kisses, high fives, whatever, but no one has explicitly taught them how to seek out those things, and they resort to their own devices, and that comes up with challenging behavior. Engagement and activities is number 3. For this one, we're looking at what do they do in their free time? What are their leisure activities like? A lot of the learners that we work with, their day from moment they wake up until moment they go to bed is explicitly structured with someone telling them what to do, potentially hands-on making them do things, guiding every step of their day. And they're not given this time to just be and exist and do things on their own. So when there are these like gaps where no one's explicitly telling them what to do and they have skill deficits there, they don't start engaging with a puzzle or reading a book or looking at a magazine or coloring or playing on the iPad, they might start engaging in challenging behavior. So we need to make sure we're teaching. And the engagement and activities, again, it doesn't have to be things that we understand necessarily as neurotypicals. It can be things that they already enjoy and like, and we show them how to engage with those things in a way that's beneficial in the environment that they're in. And then lastly, and this is to me the most important one that a lot of us, even as adults, are probably missing, tolerating, coping with, and accommodating adversity. And it's important to note, it's not just tolerating, it's not just learning how to sit and like exist around something that we think is aversive. It's, okay, now that this thing is here, what do I do about it? How do I explain that I'm mad or that I'm stressed or that I'm anxious? How do I get myself into like a reset situation and like bring myself back around? So one first step is to get that little bit of tolerating happening, but then we need to figure out what do we do next with that? Because it's not a lot of the work I used to do work with like desensitization. And I took a wonderful class on how to use ACT with desensitization. And what's important to note, and anyone who's listening that might be dealing with some of these things, just because someone externally looks like they're tolerating something does not mean internally they are. They could have all sorts of thoughts happening about it. They could have all sorts of physiological reactions happening, but they're conditioned to present themselves a certain way to make it seem like everything's good. So we need to make sure we're helping not just topographically show that things are okay, but what to do. How do you take care of yourself? How do you advocate yourself in these situations? All right, so lastly, before we finish, I'm going to talk a little bit about shaping. So this is step 3. Shaping is like probably the best thing we have available to us in this science. And a lot of us use this when we're looking at communication, especially teaching how to say initial words or use PECs and things like that. Shaping is used so much. When it comes to challenging behavior, up until Hanley started publishing with the skills-based treatment, it was rare for me to meet other behavior analysts who were using shaping. I think like Steve Ward and maybe a couple of others. So with shaping, all of the programs I've written, again, for the past 10 years that address challenging behavior are written from a shaping standpoint. So this is how we can do that. First, we need to assess where the learner is currently performing. Next, we need to include assessment of how the learner is responding to stimuli in the environment and what stress responses are occurring so that this can be included in the shaping process. And then lastly, we need to create small obtainable goals for navigating the challenging situations instead of black and white, all or nothing behavior plans. So what I'm going to do is show you a video. It's a video of a dog. I apologize that it's a video of a dog, but it's the best video of shaping I've ever been able to find. And I learned so much, even with how much I already focus on shaping, watching this woman with her dog, I learned so much. So pay careful attention to how she analyzes what is happening for her dog and the plan she develops to address this situation. And reflect on, do you take this level of care and attention when developing plans for your clients? I definitely did not early in my career, and I'm still working on doing it as well as she did, even with all of the experience I have. Oh, good. So I saw some of you putting in the chat how much you liked the video. I'm glad. Go ahead and share with me before I pull the slides back up, what came up with you for this video. What were some of the things she was doing in terms of assessing her dog and coming up with a better plan? Focusing on the stress response, the body language, yes, responding to the cues, observing her dog very closely, observing the emotional cues, support. She didn't rush through the steps, watching the dog, maybe filming to see what was going on, hypersensitivity of the dog's body language. Very good. Awesome. I have a slide that I'll put up, so I'm not going to talk too much more about it, but I have to add one more slide, one more video real quick that I just downloaded. So that wasn't ready when I first got on here. So hopefully, oh, it's not gonna work. Hold on, never mind. All right, I'm gonna go back to the slides. Taking time, yes. Yes, Amanda, perfect. I think that she included the dog's point of view. Let me get back to the slides. So here's the link if you all want to watch that is on the slides. And then here's my just debrief of what this involved. So she identified what stimuli were involved. She looked at what are all the things in the environment that are leading to these stress responses. And she took the dog's point of view to figure that out. You know, the hand response, the turning away, the word that she was saying, all of those things. I know for myself personally, I don't, prior to watching this video, didn't typically go into that level of detail when looking at challenging behavior. So when we're looking at being comprehensive, this is what I'm talking about, really looking at what point, like where are these stress responses coming in? The little, the little guy that I showed you all earlier with the head banging, one of his aversive things is hair clippers. And it'd be nice if we could just not work through that. But he also has a lot of aversion to doctor's appointments and dentists, and he can't get medical treatment that he needs. So one of the ways we're trying to help build up his coping and navigating that is working with the hair clippers and teaching him how to navigate that. And mom was working on using shaping with him. And I noticed during one of our observations, just when she turned to the cabinet where the clippers are to get them out, he went like this and put his hand up. And that's a stress response, right? Mom didn't necessarily notice that at the time and kind of pushed forward with the steps, but we should have stopped right there. Oh, I see this is difficult for you. We'll try again some other time. And working on building up, maybe she needs to take a smaller step. Instead of turning all the way to the cabinet, she just turns slightly. No stress response. Okay, we're good. Let's practice that a little bit. And then we keep moving forward. So we have to be good about also identifying what those stress responses are. She knows them, this woman, for the dog, the whale eye and the lip lick and all of that kind of stuff. How many of us know what those responses are for our learners, or we're so focused on the intensive, challenging behavior that we're missing all of the precursors? Precursors could be as simple as looking at the clock when math time's getting closer, shifting around in the chair a bit, turning away. All of those types of things, if they're in a part of a chain that ultimately lead to a challenging behavior, are likely precursors. Carefully analyzing how to break the new instruction response down to the smallest level. She didn't throw into place a brand new plan where she says the new cue and turns and walks away, right? She broke it all the way down to just practicing sitting with the cue and keeping her body facing him and all of that to limit the amount of stress being provided and really condition that to a high level. Hundreds of teaching trials. A lot of us, again, write these behavior intervention plans, put them into place, and then we get frustrated, like, why is the learner having a hard time? Well, we just did a 180 on their whole entire environment without providing them with any teaching or supports, and just expected that because we controlled the reinforcers, things would magically change. That's not typically how it works. Moving back when necessary. So again, noticing how the dog was responding to what she was doing. And if the dog was too stressed, she didn't say, too bad, I'm pushing forward, you'll have to learn. She backed off And again, we're taught to do the opposite of that. We create more stressful situations by pushing forward instead of noticing what's going on for our learners. And then responding to the learners' responses, I've kind of already talked about that. I don't want to go into too much additional on that, but we've covered it. So those are the things for me. I think some other things came up in the chat, and that's wonderful. So I was hoping to close with a video of my son. I thought I got it situated into an MP4, but I have to get it uploaded real quick. So just give me a second. So how fluent am I with this content? I'm going to be working on uploading a video while I talk to you all about this stuff. So with my son, Taylor, some of the things that I've noticed for him, how important developmental milestones are. So new issues seem to occur with him right on time based on changes he is going through based on his age. And I needed to be aware of this. So we had like your typical things that toddlers tend to have difficulty with: transitions, tolerating no, waiting, all of that kind of stuff. But there's a whole lot of other things that happen as children get older. He's almost 6 now. And even now he's very much in this phase where it's like, I want what I want when I want it. And like learning that, you know, again, wait is a thing. Like, even though he learned that as a toddler, it's a whole new situation, and he has more creativity and problem solving. So even when we tell him wait or we tell him no, instead of honoring that from us, he's like problem solving how he can just be creative and like figure out how to do it on his own. So we have a whole new set of things we have to deal with and explicitly teach him. So another thing that has come up too, supporting and coaching based on skill deficit. So I'm almost always providing support and coaching with the understanding he's engaging in the challenging behaviors because he hasn't yet learned what to do instead. In rare situations where this wasn't the case, I still communicated clearly with him what the expectations were. And it's kind of been difficult for me because I have situations where other people are in his life, like my parents or his dad or the babysitters, and they don't always engage with him in this way. And watching that difference, like how much easier upset he gets, and like there's just such a negative quality of experience for him. It's really hard for me as mom to like watch that go down. So I can only imagine for the clients we serve, for the parents, what that experience is like for them if behavior analysts come in and are too hard lined with the children and are not supporting and coaching them based on what they need. Additionally, I work on shifting as he shifts. So if he allows me to continue to support him, I do. If his motivation shifts, like if he's interested, one day he really wanted to go somewhere. And so I was trying to like, okay, let's hurry up and go, blah, blah, blah. And then he like sort of dropped down and he was like, I don't want to go anymore. And like he was getting real close to me. And I was like, it seems like maybe you just want a hug right now. And that's what he wanted. So we hugged instead. And then we got excited about going where we were going. He doesn't, and even that was like when he was like 2 or 3, even when he would have like full communication, so good. His communication was so good. In stressful times, his communication would disappear. And I have to know that and be able to shift with him and give more support as needed. And thinking about that with our clients, we don't know what kind of stress they're in all the time. We don't know what it's like to live in this world that they're living in. So we need to make sure we're being compassionate and supportive as much as possible, especially if we're creating more stressful environments to help them navigate those environments with them. If he was too stressed and continued escalating, I would shift to ignoring until he was ready to engage. We all reach a point where we just need to like recenter, pause everything, and just have some space and recenter. I had to do a lot of planned interaction around his current motivations. He's a kid who loves like the negative type of interactions. He loves chase. He likes to be like play the like don't you dare game and have fake arguments and just be like, he wants to play pranks and be a jokester and all this kind of stuff. So I have to figure out how to incorporate those in a positive manner. Otherwise, if I don't, he'll just bring that up in our day-to-day activities, but it will be like a real argument, or he'll try to get away from me when it's unsafe and those types of things. So I need to make sure I really understand his current motivation and I'm giving him enough exposure to that reinforcer. Practice, practice, practice. Even with typical language development, I've had to do a ton of reminders of what to say or do during high probability situations, and then immediately practice the response with prompting. If he needs this much practice with someone who doesn't have difficulty with language, how much practice would someone need who's receiving intervention for a language delay or disability? Just something to think about. So this is the video. I'm going to stop my share real quick. Michelle, I noticed, posted in the chat there's a survey to take when you're finished. So make sure to check that out. And then hopefully this video I can show you real quick. It's just an example of just what I was talking about with that like negative arguing type stuff with him. I thought I uploaded it. Yep, it should be there, but it's not showing up in my Fox account for some reason. Well, hold on.
Megan?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
I could make myself the presenter and share it from my end if you'd like.
I think, did you get it converted? That was the issue because it was the one that wasn't an MP4.
Yes, good point. No, I didn't. Maybe if you, can you share your screen? Would that work? I know the audio won't be as good, but you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really short clip, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Yeah, let me check real quick. Let me pull it up.
So just while you're doing that, if you, just as we're coming to the end, if you don't mind me just doing a couple of admin things, Megan, while you're working on that. Yeah, so as Megan said, I've put a couple of links in the chat. One of them is to access BACB CEUs. So you will need the 2 codes that Megan referred to during tonight's webinar. Just so you know, the first 100 BCBAs get their certs immediately. For those beyond the first 100, you'll just need to apply after 24 hours. So thank you so much for that. And also, as Megan said, there is an evaluation survey. You will be taken to that automatically when you exit out of this webinar. I've also put the link in the chat if you wish to take it right now. And just to access those links, please just copy and paste them into your browser. How are you doing, Megan?
Perfect. Yeah, I have it pulled up. We'll see if it wants to screen.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
All right. It's a short one, just something fun so you can see how to have some like banter with your kids if they like this kind of thing.
What are we gonna have for breakfast? Nothing? Oh, so I can eat all that bacon? It's all my bacon. No way, I'm gonna eat it all. It's all for me. It is. So you're gonna eat all our bacon? No way. It's mine. All right, so that's
it. You can see again, we kind of just engage in this banter, and that's what helps make sure when the day-to-day stuff is happening, he doesn't say no way to me or try to argue with me when we need to be moving and going to a different transition. So just one example, if you have any clients who like that kind of thing, there's a lot of resources, again, at the end of the presentation, different podcast episodes, webinars that Google link with all the different escape, extinction, and other extinction resources. And I'll also be doing, hopefully in December, the content that I shared today. I have a lot of hands-on practice with like writing programs based on shaping and really looking at how to apply what we talked about. I just can't do it in a 2-hour presentation. So I'm hoping to do some type of like marathon training in December. So keep an eye out for that being advertised if you would like to attend that. And again, feel free to email me. I'm putting my email in the chat one more time. If you have any other questions or need any information.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was absolutely awesome. And as you can see in the chat, everyone is just very grateful for you sharing your expertise, and everyone's talking about how important the presentation was this evening. So thank you so much for being so generous with your resources also. So I've posted them multiple times, but I'll also email all the attendees tomorrow with those links to the slides as well. And also big, massive shukran for translating them or organizing that they get translated into Arabic. That's really such a fantastic resource for our Arabic speaking behavior analysts in the audience this evening. So thank you so much for that wonderful resource. Everyone, links are in the chat. I will be emailing you all tomorrow. If you have any issues related to BACB codes, please feel free to email me. And yeah, thank you. Do you have any final words, Megan, or are we good to sign off?
I also did want to thank Tarek and Amira for the translation as well. That's something that we'll be working on, additional content of mine, getting it translated into Arabic and hopefully some other languages as well. So keep an eye out for that. And Michelle, just thank you for hosting me and everyone for attending today. This was wonderful.
Thanks, Megan. You're an absolute superstar. So thanks, everyone, and go do better. Thank you. Be safe. Good night.